Cage has ever been happy. He just is Nic Cage.
Nicolas Cage doesn't belong in a subpar role. Like, he's...
I think he doesn't belong in front of a camera.
It has Nicolas Cage in it, and it doesn't have a cheesy cover. I'm gonna watch it. Because I remember the Nicolas Cage of Gone in 60 Seconds.
Yeah, you're the one that you're still holding on. I get it.
Hello and welcome to the Nic Cage special part 1, because you know there's going to be more.
Is that the whole name?
That's the whole name, Hadley. Because you know what? There are so many bad Nicolas Cage films, we couldn't make just one.
Absolutely not. You know, from day one, when we first started doing this podcast and we were researching the first movies, we were noticing one of the most common themes in these terrible movies was Nicolas Cage. So we figured at first, you know, like, oh, we can just have a Nic Cage movie time to time. But there's just so fucking many terrible movies from that guy that we're just like, we have to put these together. There's just too many.
Right, he did 8 movies last year alone.
That is incredible. We're gonna have to check to see which of those is the highest rated. Actually,
Ooh, that's a good question.
If anybody knows which of his 8 movies was the highest rated, please post in the comments. Let us know.
Absolutely. Well, we picked 2 winners for you today. Well, winners is not the right word.
We'll use that term loosely. So the first one is called 211. Now this one actually, as far as the director's backstory and what it's based on, it's got a pretty interesting, it's pretty interesting leading up and, until the movie. So the writer-director, his name is York Shackleton.
Wait, isn't that Dale's fake name on King of the Hill?
That's Shackleford, but, he's more entertaining. So York Shackleton originally did not start off with the goal of being a writer-director. He was actually a professional snowboarder.
Say what?
Exactly. He even went as far as he was one of the pioneers of a lot of tricks. He created the rodeo flip. He was on hundreds of commercials with dozens of products, including Right Guard, Taco Bell, Gillette, all kinds of like really big name things. So
then why did he make a movie?
Well, that's a funny story, and not as much funny as tragic. So he had a life-threatening injury in his while snowboarding, and I couldn't actually find exactly what the injury was, but his backstory was just he had suffered a life-threatening injury. So one can assume he fell down really hard. Because you know what they say, going fast is not going to kill you. It's stopping fast that will.
That's fair.
So, anyway, after this accident, he was no longer able to snowboard, which, it's very sad. But while he was doing the commercials for the snowboarding, he discovered he actually had a passion for the camera. So he moved out to LA and started... he decided he wanted to make movies. Everybody makes bad decisions, and that was one of his. So, this movie 211, interestingly enough, was based off of a true story that when you read about it is a really exciting true story. So it's a shame that they turned it into dog shit.
Yeah, it really is. And the thing that's really funny about this is they moved it to an entirely different place. So the actual event that this movie is based off of is the North Hollywood shootout in 1997. And it was a shootout between 2 bank robbers and the Los Angeles Police Department.
Which, that is incredibly exciting, and I don't see why they would need to bastardize a story like that.
Absolutely. But they did. They moved it to a place that doesn't even exist. It's called Chesterford, Massachusetts.
Chesterford,
Massachusetts. So you made a story based off of a real story that's also extremely fascinating. I think you guys should definitely go check it out. We're not going to focus too much on that because that's not what we do here. But North Hollywood Shootout, look it up. You're going to learn a lot about it. Very fascinating. So, but what they did here is they took that story, they took maybe the shootout part, it seems like, and pretty much made it into a movie and then associated it with that story to just bring a little bit of extra interest.
Now, there are ways where you can take a big event like that and move it to a different location and have it, be nice. If you wanted to have, like, a rendition of a bank robbery in France or something, and you move it to Paris, but base it off, that American shootout, that actually could be pretty interesting. But keeping it in the same country, in, a city notorious for crime, and just moving it to a fake town in the Northeast, I don't see any advantage to doing that.
Yeah, not at all. Well, this movie was so terrible that nobody in the United States put it in the theater at all.
Can you blame them?
I cannot. But internationally, they did actually make $937,000.
Huh. Well, I can understand why it would be international, because this movie was actually shot in Bulgaria. So it's based on an event that happened in California, is based in Massachusetts, and was shot in Bulgaria.
Well, there's a lot of the reasons why this movie is so messed up.
So, the movie actually starts off with a somewhat interesting premise that wasn't included in the North Hollywood shootout, of course. And that is, there was a kid in high school, and he's been getting bullied for years, and finally fights back, punches a bully, and of course, that's when the principal walks in. No context. So they threaten the kid with either expulsion, or he has to do a ride-along with the police, which well, I could talk for an hour just about that. So and then he's doing the ride-along, and that's when the bank robbery happens. So the kid is trying to hide, trying to help, trying to not get his head shot off,
Let me just say something, okay? So, my stepfather is actually a former police captain, okay? So, I know a little bit about the police, and I can guarantee you right now, they would have never brought their ride-along with them to a bank robbery. They would have dropped that kid off at the station, or left him with another car, or would have not gone to the call at all.
Frankly, I can imagine that'd be the kind of thing the police would do when they were off duty.
Right. So, I mean, there's just so many problems with the storyline, like, right off of the bat. And, it was, you could see all the problems very quickly. You're going to hear our frustration. We're going to play some highlights for you, but then we're going to come back. We're going to do something that's a little bit different this time and try to provide a little bit more context to our angst and our pain. But to start us out, here are some highlights from 211.
Right now,
This is a Bud Light Platinum.
this man right here has a Bud Light with a higher percentage in the rating of this movie. So, let's get rocking. Well, your story is going to be made into a movie, and Nicolas Cage is going to play you.
Oh, man. Is he going to do that in 1994? That would have been great.
World-class acting right
Oh, yeah. I say it live now. I make facial expression now. I shoot now.
here. What if we name him George? I like the name George.
Listen here. Just because you make a code doesn't mean anybody follows it.
But you gotta question why that just scene just happened.
I just question why this movie happened.
They're trying to make it sound like they're going really fast, but they're like clearly not.
Is that what happened just now?
Yeah, because like you hear the way the engine was sounding, it was like it's like high
When
rev.
it was probably just idling.
Yeah, it was like going maybe 30 miles an hour.
That was intense, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Does she live or die? The waitress.
She's dead. She definitely did.
That's pretty big blast, wasn't it? Yeah, she's dead. Somehow he's not getting hit. He's a horrible shot. Like, he should never rob a bank. Rarely does the main character that brings money to the movie die.
Yeah, it's true. It doesn't happen very
Nicolas Cage,
often.
you're not gonna have a movie.
Does Nicolas Cage really bring money to it, though?
Yes.
Dude, here's what's amazing, though, is these action scenes are well done, but it's still boring as shit.
Yeah.
It's kind of impressive to have an action scene this well done, but have the movie be this boring.
Why'd you do that, Kenny?
Kenny gonna die.
And there, you see the nicest...
What is that, cocaine?
I think there would have been more emotion if they'd used the text-to-speak thing on Microsoft Word.
Yeah, right. Chandler, you need to calm down.
Are you okay? This is your mother.
Where is your ride-along? I want to taste some new pigs.
Oh,
my God.
I need to up my selfie game.
That was the end.
Thank God.
Thank the Lord it's over!
Oh, thank God.
Now, one interesting thing that you could hear me mention in there, and this is actually something I do, in a way, find kind of fascinating about this movie. So, this movie was actually pretty action-packed.
It really was.
The CGI was good. You know, the shootouts.
They even used real effects.
They did. They actually blew up cars. Like, they had SUVs with explosives blow up, shoot up in the air. They had, you know, shootouts with automatic weapons, all kinds of crazy shit like that. But it was so fucking boring, I could barely keep my eyes open.
Absolutely. Well, because after a while, there was so much gunfire going on, it almost sounded like ocean waves. You know, it was just like this, it was just a calming sensation that you started to feel after a while, just hearing pow, 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 pow.
So what you're saying is there just wasn't enough breaking up the action to make it an exciting part of the movie.
Absolutely. Like you can really hear throughout these entire clips, you know, that there's a lot of noise, and we almost have to yell to talk at all during the film because of the fact that there is so much gunfire. And yeah, it does. It kind of numbs you to the whole thing because it's just constantly happening.
Probably should have turned it down, but, you know, hindsight is 20/20.
Right. Well, you know, and we didn't know what we were expecting with all of that. And, you know, audio guys have this tendency of making gunfire and these huge explosions really, really loud and everything else super quiet. And that's a pet peeve of mine, but that's a whole nother episode. We could make a whole episode just off of that.
Absolutely.
Now, these movies are so terrible, and you've probably heard us mention this in our first 2 episodes if you've watched them. If not, go watch them. But we have a death bet that we like to do, and this time we had a special guest with us.
Yes, we had our friend Mr. Chris Kubiak join us, who offered a great insight and many laughs.
Absolutely. And he professed to us, sort of unwillingly, that he is actually somewhat of a Nic Cage fan.
You know, sometimes it's good to open up to your friends.
Right. You know, the first thing you have to do to solve a problem is to admit that you have one.
Definitely. That was a big step for him.
It really was. So, Kubiak, although he was a noob with us, this is his first time on our podcast, we will definitely probably have him back.
Oh, no doubt.
Here is some highlights of us making our death bet.
Which, of course, has $1 on the line every time.
Dun dun dun.
Nicolas Cage's partner is gonna die during this robbery. That's my death bet.
I'm gonna say Nic Cage does.
You think Nic Cage does?
I do.
Alright. Okay.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't think it's going to end in a horrible fashion.
You think everybody's gonna live?
I think everybody's going to live.
Okay.
But maybe the husband gets almost to death.
Like injured?
Yeah, it's to where we are in suspense enough to where it's like, oh my god, he's going to have a baby, how can this happen? But it's already a film with Nicolas Cage, how much more traumatic can it be?
Right.
Like, you can't cut it.
Yeah.
You can't keep doing this.
Well, we have our death bet, ladies and gentlemen.
There it is.
Fucking shot me.
And he better live. I want Nic Cage to die so bad because I'm so fucking sick of losing these death bets.
Aiming a sniper rifle at Nicolas Cage's head. And just...
Hey, my name's Steve. I'm dead right now, so I cannot pick up the phone.
Well, I mean, he's definitely
gone
not
too
dead.
far at this point. I don't think he's gonna die.
Yeah, I feel
I
like
think Kubiak's right. I think Kubiak's gonna win.
Yeah, they did kind of leave you hanging on that, didn't they?
Because he yelled about the fact that he died.
But they never showed him die or acknowledged
Right.
him dying. Wait, so he did die?
I'm very... I don't know.
God, this is bad.
Oh, he's still alive, you bastard. You nailed it.
Wow, so Kubiak wins on his first try.
On the not deathbed.
Damn, first person to dethrone Daniel.
Man.
Nice.
Now watch him just like drop dead of a heart attack right now.
So my reign is over. After about 6 straight times of getting it right, Kubiak comes in there and steals it.
Yes, he definitely did intercept it from you.
He did. And the movie played with my emotions the whole time, as you could hear in the clips, because the guy that I was expecting to die, which was Nicolas Cage's son-in-law, Steve was his name.
Fucking Steve.
Fucking Steve. Steve gets shot fairly early on in the film, and he even gets stuck in the car because his seatbelt doesn't work, and he's getting shot at by all these bullets. So I'm sitting there like, oh man, Steve's gonna die. I nailed this. But then, of course, Steve just gets shot like in the leg, I think, or something. I can't remember where it was, but it was an arm or just an appendage or something.
Yes, now I also went through a range of emotions during this movie. There was anger that the movie existed, sadness that the movie was playing on the TV, self-loathing that I was watching the movie. It was not good for my psyche, but I'm just gonna have to, try to come to terms with it and move on.
Yeah, it was a painful moment, and you picked Nicolas Cage. He didn't end up dying this time.
Why the fuck not?
I'm really sorry, man. But, you're going to get one of these days. I know it. I just know it.
We watch enough, law of averages.
That's right.
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut now and then.
All right. So, any of our listeners out there have probably noticed that Hadley and I are dumbasses.
Oh, there's just no question about it.
Well, we're not going to sit here and say that we're the smartest guys in the room,
Considering we're the only ones in the room, I still wouldn't say that.
I'm in an apartment building, so when we watch these movies, there's other people around me that are probably much smarter than us.
Most likely.
So, that all being said, we have a new segment now called Eat Your Words.
Unfortunately, you just can't always be right about everything, and sometimes it happens quickly, too. So, let's hear some examples of when we just didn't nail it.
Right, but this time, in the Nicolas Cage movie, he gets the lead bad guy role.
Oh, dude, no, confirmed Nick Cage is gonna die. He's talking about how he's about to retire. Confirmed Nick Cage is dying. Because they always die a day before retirement. To be fair, I did have a lot of reasons to believe that. The day before retirement thing. I mean, think about it. It's one of the most common jokes they make on The Simpsons.
Yeah, well, no matter what your reasoning was, eat your words.
Well,
Eat 'em.
A for effort. A for...
Eat 'em.
Nom, 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 nom.
Ah, there it is. Well, sometimes you think glass is bulletproof.
But it's not.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, bulletproof windows. That's expensive.
Of course.
There it went. Never mind.
Yes, never mind indeed.
Yes, Kubiak, you ate your words. Nom, 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 nom.
You think he's gonna do it?
No.
Whoa!
Well,
I was gonna say yes.
So when you get things wrong?
That
was a great example.
was a great example indeed.
It truly was. It took 1 second for me to be wrong. we didn't. There was that segment was not cut down. That is actually how fast it happened.
This is pretty hilarious. He's not gonna die. Bam! You finished that sentence.
As you can see, everybody, this segment we did a lot more editing than usual on this one.
Hadley? You sat there and played Angry Birds the whole time.
I was protecting us from those evil green pigs.
So, we are almost done with 211 here, but we want to give you our final takes on what we thought about the movie. So, Hadley?
Like I said, just from reading it on paper, like reading the IMDb page and the Wikipedia, it's this director with a cool story. It's based on an exciting event. But, so, just read about it. Sounds cool. Sounds like it could be cool. But it wasn't. It was just absolute hot garbage. I think that if they reworked it, but actually kept it a lot closer to the real North Hollywood shootout, because I mean that's a movie in and of itself. It doesn't really need anything.
Yeah, I mean that story is absolutely fascinating. They didn't need anything. It didn't need anything at all. It was, and you really brought this up. You nailed it when you said this movie had so much action, but it was still boring as shit.
Yeah, I just feel like they really missed the mark on this one.
They did. And honestly, I think Kubiak really had the best final take on this movie.
Yes, unfortunately he could not join us today, but we did get his final take the day of, and he summed it up fairly well. So let's give a listen to him.
I'm thinking based off what you guys said is, of course it was shitty, but the thing that did make it good was the little bit of suspense that they did have in it. Is that they kind of kept you captive. Like, you didn't really give a shit about whether he lived or died, the baby daddy,
right.
But you still wanted to know.
Right.
And in the end, they made you believe that it was going to happen. And Nicolas Cage, you always want him to somehow in the deep recesses of our minds, we want the main person to die.
Especially the
Actually, it was him,
yeah.
And he came so close a few times, and that kind of keeps you at the edge of your seat.
A little bit, yeah.
And so they had that going for them, but in the end,
no.
1 to 10. 10 being the best, I give it a 2. It wasn't much. I might recommend this on a super drunk night. If I wanted everybody at my house to just shut the fuck up and go to sleep, I would want them there for that.
Right.
Like, hey guys, look, party's over, but don't tell them that. It's like, let's watch a movie. Watch a movie and everybody crashes.
Yeah, right. Guys, got this really awesome Nicolas Cage movie, which, first off, no one would believe you.
No one would believe it. Yeah. You can't lead with that.
You cannot.
No one ever.
Right, you can't. If you say it's a Nicolas Cage movie, immediately someone's going to be like...
Now, these movies, of course, most movies are between 1.5 and 2 hours. And even though we get some great highlights and everything, we just can't focus on this shit for that long.
We can't. And so sometimes we say random things that are funny that have nothing to do with the movie whatsoever, and we needed a way to let you guys know how funny we really are.
Yeah, this is just the kind of thing that y'all really don't want to miss out on, so we had to figure out a way to do it. So, let's listen to Where Our Minds Wander. My dongle slipped out.
The dongle.
Dongle.
Pick up my dongle.
I don't want a slippery dongle.
This is really not a good time, Miss Rosie. I'm kind of busy right now, okay?
I believe we can
Sorry about that.
That fart was just like this movie.
I wonder if
Awful.
That one's probably not gonna smell. That's just more butt burp. What I want to do is take the Cars for Kids jingle and edit out the rest, like 187 on a motherfucking car. And there, you see the nicest.
What is that, cocaine?
What are you doing?
I could have sworn there was a driveway here in the middle of your Taco Bell.
Well, as long as I'm here.
I'll take a gordita crunch, please.
The crunch box, please.
Well, I just cannot talk about 211 anymore. So, Daniel, let's move on to the next one.
All right. We have the epitome of shitty Nicolas Cage films. This movie is called Outcast.
And no, not the AT-aliens.
Yeah. Honestly, man, it's a dick move to even bring up Outcast when we're talking about this movie.
I'm sorry. Praise be unto Big Boy and Andre.
Yes, Outcast, if you're hearing us, we are so sorry for even associating you with this shit.
Y'all rock.
All right, moving on, getting back on topic here. Outcast. This film takes place in the days of the Crusades, and it begins with Nicolas Cage, and wait for it, there's a cherry on top, Hayden Christensen, another example of shitty acting. Now, these two are in the same squad, they fight together, and then after they've murdered all these people, inhumanely for no reason at all, not that murder is ever humane, Nic Cage begs him to stop leading this charge, and Hayden Christensen refuses, and then somehow they end up in China and they protect an empress. I don't know.
And Baghdad is associated in there at some point.
Right, well that makes sense for the crusade factor, but it's like they jump around all the time, and in the highlights you'll hear us be like, where are they? But let us continue to tell you a little bit more about this wonderful film. This was directed by Nick Powell. Nick, why?
This was the double Nick fail.
This was a double Nick fail. Maybe Nick Powell wanted Nicolas Cage because they had a similar name. I don't know.
I can't think of any other reason why you'd want to have Nick Cage in a movie.
Yes, but this has all of the elements of shittiness that you want. Nic Cage doing an accent, sword fights the whole time for no reason at all. For some reason, China is associated. This has just all the makings of shitty. So, Hadley, are you ready to show these people the highlights from Outcast?
Do we have to?
Well, it's kind of what we do.
Fine.
Every time I see Hayden Christensen act, it just, to me, every face he makes just looks like versions of Constipated.
I imagine Darth Vader is much more pleasant than Nicolas Cage.
Swords, dead, people, galloping, swinging,
Very
slicing.
bad fake death action there.
Oh, stabbing, horse, dead, roll over, more action. Guys on horses, throw that dude. Slash,
Shut the
slash.
fuck up, that's even worse than the movie. Oh
God wills it.
my. Is there a point to this at all?
So far, no. This is pretty accurate. This is what the Crusades were like. People were just killing people.
I don't know, I feel like they must have had much better death physics in real life. This like rivals Tony Hawk Pro Skater fall physics.
Okay, so where are they? That's my question.
Fucking stupid.
Uh-huh. I don't even know what to say.
Nothing yet, I mean they're just setting it up.
Right, I'm waiting for the story to, like, kick in here.
Oh, this is assuming there is a story.
Uh-oh.
Is shit getting real?
Oh, yeah, he's gonna stab his daddy.
Oh, what a dick.
He did.
Who did?
His dad did.
Oh yeah, he did.
He stabbed him.
He looks very relaxed for being dead. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah, he really does. He looks like he's chilling.
He's like, yeah, I'm dead. I'm sitting here dead.
Oh, nice.
Peeing on him?
Oh, yeah.
There is literally no point to this movie so far. Like, am I just missing it, or is there not a fucking point at all? Tell me, is there a point to this, dude?
Wait!
No. How is that possible?
How is it possible? How is it possible? How is it possible?
Wow, we're only like 20 minutes into the movie and I'm already so stir crazy from how bad it is I'm making stupid noises.
This movie would be better if there was no dialogue. Nah.
So this is just everything that can be wrong with the movie. God, this dialogue is so fucking cheesy, dude. Like, what the fuck is up with this cheese?
We all have our ways to
Oh, this movie is terrible.
We'd already be there in she
Can you fast forward?
No, we can't fast forward. We'll miss what's going on.
Oh, yeah. That's a fear I have.
Stay.
I would not trust her.
I have something that may interest you.
Definitely not.
Everybody who listens to these clips, they're just gonna hear like everything in the background is gonna sound like schling, fling, fling. That's all it's gonna sound like.
Dude, the transitions and stuff in this movie are so brutally random that I'm just getting so fucking mad at it. Okay, dude, you know what the scary thing about this movie is?
What?
Nic Cage is the highlight.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
There's Nicholas.
With a fucking snake!
Nick.
With a snake! Why did Nicolas Cage just show up with a fucking snake?
Oh God. Oh goodness.
My companion said. Because flies on a fucking goat's ass because of you.
Oh wait.
Oh my god!
Wait.
Oh my god!
Wait, for the first time.
For the
first time ever in Four Thumbs Down history, we are going to rewind the movie.
To see this again. This is the greatest quote of the podcast so far.
My companion said. That guy's as thick as flies on a fucking goat's ass because of you.
As thick as flies. What? Oh my gosh.
As thick as flies on a farting goat's ass because of you. What the fuck does...
The fuck does that mean?
I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because why are they doing this?
So yes, as we mentioned for the first time ever, we rewound the movie because the line was so shitty and funny, we had to hear it again. But it gets worse, okay? Everything about Nic Cage in this film just showed a man giving up on life.
Absolutely. Now, also, one thing that y'all didn't see from this podcast is I was in like at least a 5-minute giggle fit after the farting goat's ass line. But here is what was able to keep me from laughing the whole time. One thing that I found extremely cringeworthy about this movie. So, Nicolas Cage, of course, is doing an accent. Now, I've got a thing with bad fake accents in general. You know, I can't watch The Walking Dead because the bad fake Southern accents just grinds my gears so much. So, just in general, it's very obvious that he's doing a fake accent. But, you know, as anybody in any country in the world knows, different regions, you know, will have different accents, sometimes very slight, sometimes, you know, very noticeable. Now, Nic Cage did not stay consistent to an accent the whole time. He was, of course, you know, he kind of kept it in the same ballpark, but his dialect was just a roller coaster.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely awful. But what I think was even more awful was his eye. Because he had his eye closed, right? Like, this movie, for whatever reason, they decided to forgo either prosthetics or an eye patch maybe, or anything. They basically just said, hey, Nick, just close your eye for this entire movie.
Yes, he was supposed to, you know, the concept was that he had a missing eye. But the problem was, you know, like Daniel said, he just kept his eye closed, which means you could see his eye moving beneath his eyelids. So it just kind of looked like, you know, he had some schmutz in his eye or something.
Right. So that brings us to this segment that we're going to call Nic Cage's Eye.
Why crows? And why does he have a rattlesnake?
And why does he only have one eye? And it's clearly just closed.
The fuck is
You can
this?
clearly see his eye, his other eye, moving around and stuff, you know. It's like,
Hey, he just got his eye closed.
yeah, it's like really dumb.
Oh my god.
Hey, look at him, he's blinking and everything. It's terrible.
God, at least give him a fucking eye patch, you know?
Cut out her tongue! Blinded by my time. But I still have hair. Which is all that really matters.
You said blinded? You said blinded.
Yep.
Ugh.
Did you see Tenacious D movie? Pick of Destiny?
Yeah.
Do you remember the guy, like, on the crutch who tries to steal the Pick of Destiny after Kyle and Jack get it from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
It reminds me of that guy. Like, a lot of that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I can absolutely see that.
But the difference is that they were trying to make it stupid. They were not, but made it more stupid. Now, one other thing I just want to touch on was, you could hear me mention it there. What you couldn't hear was the probably 50 other times I brought it up, was the snake that he had. It was this, like, I think it was, well, at one point it looked like a rattlesnake. At one point it looked kind of like a python. I feel like they couldn't really decide. I know, yes, and I do know those are drastically different snakes, which is the ridiculous part. But they never say why he has a snake, and he doesn't have it the whole movie. He just shows up, he's like, oh, hey, slither, slither.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's like, how are you going to forego the prosthetic eye, but then be like, hey, hold a snake around your neck?
Well, maybe one of the employees had a pet snake, and they're like, oh, hey.
Maybe. Or maybe they just used their budget on a snake instead of a prosthetic eye.
That seems a lot more likely.
Not only was the prosthetic eye a problem.
Or lack of prosthetic eye.
Right, or lack of prosthetic eye. He also had a costume that looked like they bought it at Party City.
I really do, think they got to the set, they were filming, and they're like, oh shit, we, left the costumes back in Ohio, or I don't know why I used Ohio as an example. Shout out to the Oeoians. So
What?
it looked like they just forgot the costume and had to go out to Party City and just get a shitty pre-made costume, because his hair looks completely like nylon, and the costume is cheesy, and it's terrible. It's like, okay, so, when you're having a Halloween party and, like, your uncle's awkward friend shows up in the stupid costume? That was Nic Cage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your Pick of Destiny comparison was pretty great. Well, now that we've sufficiently ripped on his costume, which was very necessary.
Absolutely.
We are now going to move on to our death bet, which I am back on top, ladies and gentlemen.
I choose to remember it differently.
Well, we'll roll the tape because you're wrong.
Tapes can be altered. Alright, so who's dying? Nic Cage or Hayden Christensen?
Oh, man.
Can't get any worse than here.
Nic Cage.
Yeah, I say Hayden.
All right.
There's our death bet. Ooh.
Did he die? Oh, damn it. I thought Nic Cage died. Yeah, he's gonna die. Here he goes.
Oh, no, man. I think it's about to be all these motherfuckers.
I don't think so.
I think most of them were just standing there watching them kill all their friends and shit. Oh my god!
I got the death bet.
Did you though?
Oh,
Because he's
I'm
still
gonna get it.
fighting.
Oh, I'm gonna get it. He dead.
No, he's not.
Oh,
dead.
he gonna be dead.
Trust me, dude. Nobody wants
Oh,
him dead
he's
more.
going to be dead.
Nobody
Watch.
wants him dead more
Yes.
than me. But
Here it comes. Oh, come on.
No,
Bring on
dude.
the death bet. Bring on that dollar.
No.
I hope you're ready.
He's gonna beat these motherfuckers up.
Oh, he's gonna beat some people up, but he gonna die. Yeah, like Julius Caesar style.
Oh my god. Well, actually, it's not Julius Caesar style at all.
Well, not really, but
Julius Caesar was just like, kind of standing there, not in a battle or anything. It's like,
I know how he actually died, but I'm saying the way he just got stabbed. Yeah, there you
oh
go.
my god.
Like they really wanted him dead. I think this is a metaphor for his career. It's just like, just please die already.
And like the fake stabbing is just.
And there's like not enough stab wounds for how many times he's been stabbed either.
Yes, he died! I don't know, you shit!
He's still alive.
Fucking.
You owe me $1.
Why did you have to live? He's totally fine considering he's had a piece of wood through his heart and everything. Now, to be fair, I do think surviving would not be an easy thing to do if you had a big piece of wood through your heart.
Yeah, no, he definitely should have died.
Oh yes, I'm no doctor. You know, doctors out there, if I'm wrong, that you know, maybe be easy to live with a piece of wood through your heart. Maybe it's just vampires. So doctors, let me know. Post in the comments if that's vampires exclusively or also humans.
Well, apparently it's Hayden Christensen. And that is a great segue into our next segment. You ate your words on the deathbed, so now it's time to eat some more of your words, Hadley.
Oh, well, let's see how nutritious they are first. I'm trying to lose weight. Yeah, you know, they're welcoming What?
They're welcoming
Him in as the new king. Now, also, let me just say, Daniel, thanks for the alley-oop there.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. You know, I can't let my brother drown, even though you sounded like a jackass right then.
Okay, now, I do have to say, though, why are we picking on me in this one?
Well, you know, you're just an easy target sometimes.
Okay, we're going to have to talk about that before the next one.
Well, maybe you shouldn't be playing Angry Birds while I'm editing.
Hey, Green Pigs, man, I need to know what to do if they ever decide to invade us.
Yeah, well, to be fair, there was a moment that I had before we started recording where I did refer to Nicolas Cage as Nicholas.
Oh, I so wish that we had a recording of the great story of Nicolas Cage. He is actually the Greek god of terrible movies. He started his life as a smaller god, but a much more successful one. This Greek Nicholas then went on a big-ass spree of buying all kinds of Greek shit, like, you know, little shoes that make you fly. Like, who was that who flied with the shoes? Was it Achilles before he got shot?
No, it was Hermes, I believe.
Hermes, yeah. So, the guy from Futurama. So, he was like, he spent all his money on that and then had to take part in a lot of terrible Greek plays. So, yes, he is the god of bad movies.
Gracious. Well, now that Hadley has sufficiently wasted your time with that terrible story of Nicolas Cage.
That is not a terrible story. It's a great lesson for everybody.
Well, you know, don't ever pray to the Greek god Nicholas.
Well, obviously not.
Well, Hadley, what is your final take on Outcast?
Well, you know, let me compare it to the other movie that we saw, the other Nicolas Cage movie. So, like I said about 211, there is a lot of potential there. They may have completely missed the mark, but there was a lot of potential. It's about, you know, an exciting real story. They obviously had the money for good effects, and so they had a decent budget and everything, so definitely potential with that one. Outcast, on the other hand, if they were to try to redo that one to make it successful, it would basically just be like reheating a turd in the microwave.
You know, here's my thing. If they could have explained better the reason why Hayden Christensen and Nicolas Cage were in China to begin with, that'd have been great. They didn't really explain their journey to China at all, and we were very confused as to where they were a lot of the movie, which was very frustrating. And you know, to fill you guys in a little bit more on the story here, the reason that this whole gigantic sword fight that went on throughout the entire movie happened is because an emperor got killed by his son because the emperor had selected his youngest son as his successor in China. And so the older son was pissed, so he kills dad, and the younger son and the daughter of the king, or the emperor, go off on this journey, and then they run into Hayden Christensen and pay him to take care of them, and then we are later introduced to Nicolas Cage. I keep wanting to say Nicholas now.
Yes, I have planted that worm in your head.
Very successfully. Well, here's another thing. I really think that we could describe this movie in about 5 seconds. Would you like to hear it?
I definitely would like to hear it.
Here's Outcast explained in 5 seconds.
Fucking goes off.
Back to sword fighting.
That's it. This movie was as good, absolutely as...
Fucking goes off.
As y'all can tell, I got the giggles here, because I may be 28, but my sense of humor is decidedly half my age at best.
Farting goat's ass. That is the proper description of this film. It is a farting goat's ass.
Well, I want to thank all y'all for joining us yet again and laughing at our pain. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, check us out on Facebook, 4 Thumbs Down. 4 is spelled out. We've got an email address, 4thumbspodcast@gmail.com. And if you have any feedback or bad movie suggestions, which we always appreciate so much, or just like want to talk mad shit to us, send us an email, post in the comments, we'll respond to the trolls.
Absolutely. We don't care what you say as long as we know you're there.
Yes, we clearly, are not always the nicest people.
Right. And we dish it out. We're willing to take it. That's fine. We understand.
Definitely. I challenge y'all, troll us.
All right. Well, Hadley, let us finish with some final highlights from this epic failure that is Outcast.
The fuck?
Everything about this movie sucks.
It almost is kind of sad sometimes thinking, the people who made these probably thought they did a good job.
I mean, from a technical standpoint, they did a lot of good things.
I always look for God, all of the wrong places.
Yeah, I don't know about that word a lot that you used.
Every time he talks, I want to punch him.
Even more than usual. Another long, pointless sword fight. Well, they paused sword fighting for about a minute there. But no, back to sword fighting. Nicolas Cage really looks like he's not even trying in this one. Even more than usual, he just looks like he's putting zero effort into this role.
Oh God, please be over. It's in the clouds. It's in the clouds.
Oh,
is it going to be fading? It's fading.
It's...
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
Yes, Hadley, we've done it. We've done it, man.
Another one.
We've made it. Whew.